Hey team, I have a really fun one today. This is one that we like to break out for our spring sessions. So this is a little Georgia O'Keeffe inspired flower bowl. Very cute, very cute. I know after this long winter, we are all really needing a little flower in our life. So here is our instructions for it. So we've got, as always, the instructions on the front, the picture on the back. Yours, of course, is laminated. This is still just a workshopped one, so it is not laminated. I'm going to go ahead and go through the instructions with you while we build our pot. First, we'll start with our little art history lesson. The parents really appreciate when we have just this small little paragraph here to teach their kids about something. That way they're not just, going to play for enrichment, but they're actually learning something. So here is our little art history lesson for this. The artwork is Red Canna, 1924. And as you're reading this to the class, this will be on the back. So all of the students will be able to look at this while you're reading it. And of course, we have a little picture of our artist down there. That's Miss Georgia. Georgia O'Keeffe was born in 1987 in Wisconsin. She lived to be 99 years old. The kids love that fact because that is so old to a child. She studied art and taught as a teacher's assistant at the University of Virginia. She is called the mother of American modernism, and she drew inspiration from nature. So you guys can literally just read it word for word. You can change it up a little if you like. Hit the highlights that you want to hit on it, whatever it is that you want to do. And while the kids are all looking at this beautiful picture of a flower, and a lot of the kids will be like, what? That's not a flower. That's why it's called modernism, because it doesn't look exactly like a flower, but that is in fact where she was drawing her inspiration. So I'm going to set this aside. I am going to read it step by step exactly how it is in our instructions. That way you guys can know that, just however you want to say it, if you want to do it word for word, or if you want to kind of put your own spin on it, that's fine too. So all of your students are going to start off, that's a little big, I'm going to pinch some off. All of your students will start off with a clay ball about this size. Our first thing we need to do is make the pinch pot bottom. So that's the base to our flower, this part right here. Pinch pot is one of the most basic forms of pottery. So pinch pot and coil pot is pretty much the two forms of pottery, that and slab, which is our flat work. So step one, we're going to set aside half of our clay to use later. It doesn't have to be exactly half, but the kids generally know how to divide something in half. So we don't need a ton of clay for our pinch pot. The walls are pretty thin in our pinch pot, and it's going to be a short and wide pinch pot. It's not going to be a tall coil pot. It's going to be short and wide so it can hold all of these pretty little petals. So step one, set aside half of your clay to use later. Form the half remainder of your clay into a smooth ball while rolling in your hands. The tip I like to give the kids here is don't use the table, because if you use the table, what happens is you turn it into like a little ball, or kind of like a little dreidel, a little spaceship, whatever you want to call it. So we want to roll it in our hands. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth because we're about to stick our thumb in there anyways. If you end up getting that diamond shape, you can just kind of move it around, manipulate it however you need to get the little diamond parts off. Step two, we're going to push our thumb into the center of our clay ball. Now, the majority of your students have already made a pinch pot. I believe they make that in the first grade. Some schools might even make it in kindergarten. So this is not something that's foreign to the students. However, the younger ones, kinders, first graders, may need a little bit more guidance for this. So push your thumb through the center of the clay ball. The thumb should be in far enough that the clay ball doesn't fall off, but not so far that it pokes through the ball, creating a donut. We don't want our thumb to go all the way through here, because then we just have, a big donut. With your thumb still inside the ball, pinch or squeeze your thumb and your other fingers together, thinning the walls of your pot. You want to rotate while pinching the walls until your pot is smooth and even. So we're just going to pinch it and turn it, pinch it and turn it. My thumb is totally still. My fingers are pressing against my thumb while it turns round and round, applying even pressure. Now, obviously the kids are not going to be applying even pressure. So once your students have made their pinch pot, it is important that you go around and check the pinch pots. A lot of times what will happen is the bottom of the pinch pot right here will be really thick. The walls will be thin and the bottom will be really thick. And what happens when this bottom is really thick is it will blow up in the kiln. It will explode in the kiln. So we generally in pottery, we're aiming for something that's no thicker than this right here, than the width of a pencil, the thickness of a pencil, about like that. Anything thicker than that and it's prone to explode. So once we have our walls nice and even, I like to press it down on the table and just press into it, making a nice flat bottom. Because when they make the pinch pot originally, it's going to have like a pointy bottom. And then we have like this weebles wobble and they don't fall down type deal. And that's a whole situation. So your students can kind of manipulate it, but you will need to go around to the younger students and just check their bottoms and make sure that they're not too thick. So there we go. Perfect. You can use the damp paper towel. And I have all of our tools here that your students will have. We have the water for them, paper towel, a pencil, and a paintbrush. They may or may not even use the paintbrush. Some of the kids like it to smooth, but I like to have my damp paper towel so that I can smooth out any cracks. And remember that the more that your students touch the clay, they're going to pull the moisture out of the clay, meaning that the clay is going to become dry and start cracking and get kind of brittle. And a lot of kids will say, well, that's okay. I can just add water. It doesn't really work that way. That pretty much just turns into a big like pile of mud, makes it, a big slippy mess. For these, we want your pot to be nice and wide so that we can lay down all of our little petals. So if you have a kid whose hole is only this big, you're going to want to tell them, hey buddy, we got to open it up like this. Short, squatty, nice and wide is what we're going for. We're going to go ahead and set this aside. That is all ready to go. Divide the other half of your clay into even-sized balls. This is step number 3. So literally they need to go through and just pinch off little pieces. We want them to be similar sizes, but nothing in nature is completely symmetrical. Nothing is perfect. So if they have, one petal that's bigger, which they will, that's totally fine. I like to remind them, hey, however you make your art, that's okay. It does not need to be perfect. We are not shooting for perfect. I will say when you are putting your petals in the bowl, 8 petals generally is a really nice number because then you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4 to fill in the holes. So 8 is a really good number to shoot for. It doesn't have to be, but it's a good number to shoot for. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. I want them to save one little ball, and that's going to be for this centerpiece right here. Now, I went to art school, so I don't know the name of that thing in a flower, but whatever that centerpiece is, you want just a little bit of that, and that's also going to cover kind of the gross part underneath there where all your petals are not totally attaching. So once we have our clay into our even-sized balls, we're going to flatten each ball in our hand to make our petals. Now, some of your kids are going to get this immediately. Some of them are going to get frustrated because they can't get the shape or whatever they want. Here's what I tell them. Petals come in many different shapes. Lots of different sizes. There could be ovals, they can be hearts, they can be circles, they can be teardrops. And if you don't like the shape of your petal, you can change it really easily. So once you flatten your petal out, so right now I have a circle petal. I don't like that. I want to have like some little points at the ends. Maybe I want it to be a teardrop. All you have to do is pinch with your fingers. This is such a hard concept for kids without these fine motor skills. So like your kinders and your first grade, this can be really difficult for them to do. If they get frustrated with it, tell them to do this. Flatten out your little ball, and then you can use your pencil to cut the shape you want into it. So if I don't like this shape, if I want it to be skinnier, I can use my little pencil here and literally draw the shape I want to into that. So either way is fine. However they want to do it, it's totally fine. So I'm going to set that guy aside, and then I'm going to do it to all the rest of these. Now, I wish that I had, gosh, if I was like 15 years younger, I would be that TikTok generation and I would know how to do this. And maybe some of you teachers can show us, but it would be very cool if I could fast forward this part, just like they do on a TikTok, and jump to the end when all these petals are made. But I am not that young, so we're going to have to just bear with me for each petal. So I'm trying to make these the same size. Your students are not going to make them the same size. That's totally fine. If it bothers you, if it bothers your students, which you know you're always going to have those perfectionists, like this little booger right here is not cooperating. You're always going to have those students who are perfectionists and they get very frustrated with themselves if it's not exactly the same. So here's what I encourage my students to do. I say, go ahead and make all your petals. And then in the end, when you see which of your petals is too big, you can easily use your pencil, just like I showed you, to trim it down. Students that want to get really fancy with this can use that pencil and make all kinds of really cool shapes. I would encourage them to think about what their favorite flower is. So a sunflower is going to have a completely different petal than like a pansy is going to have. I am also not a gardener. I definitely do not have a green thumb. Everything dies in my house, so I don't even know what a pansy flower looks like, but I imagine it's different. I know that it's different. Maybe one of you guys can shoot me a text after you watch this and let me know what that actually looks like. I'm gonna go for this just generic little teardrop shape here. All right, so this is number 8. Smashing it down, pinching the end, smashing a little more. So there I have my 8 little petals. And I don't care that some of them are not the right shape. Okay, once you have your petals completed, we're going to move on to step number 4. Step number 4 is to place these inside of our pot. Now, if you are a new teacher here and you've never watched a video, it's very possible you've never heard us talk about slipping and scoring. So let's discuss that really quickly. Slipping and scoring is how we attach everything in pottery. So clay has this very annoying habit of having muscle memory, and when it dries, it likes to return to the way that it once was. So if we are trying to attach these two pieces, when it dries, it's going to try and pop off like this. The number one reason that students' work gets broken is because it's not scored, it's not slipped, and it's not blended correctly. So that is kind of our little motto here. I'm going to write it down so everybody can see it. We score, we slip, and probably the most important part, we blend. Sometimes if your clay is wet enough, it is okay if it's not, if all these things have not been accomplished. So let's talk about what scoring means. Scoring is basically you are trying to create a Velcro with your clay. So on the parts where your 2 pieces of clay are going to touch like this, that's going to go on like that. So right here and right here is what needs to be scored. And I like to tell the kids it's like a hashtag because all the kiddos know what that is, right? So we're going to make a little hashtag. This is our Velcro. Okay, so this is our score right here. Add a little bit of water. That's our slip. Now slip technically is a watered down kind of muddy version of clay. However, we haven't made that in years for our students because, oh my gosh, it's really time intensive and water works just fine. So I've added my slip, which is the water. You don't want it to get too crazy. Now blending is the most important part. Blending means we're going to go into where the clay is attached, which is going to be right along the edges here. And we're just going to use our pencil to kind of make that line disappear. Now this piece of clay is one piece of clay with this. It has been officially blended with that. When we're putting our petals in this, you can tell your students, and they're going to do it however they want, but it's a really good idea to do 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Do those 4 first, and then come in and fill those holes. But you know, if they want to just do it round and round and round like that, that's okay too. I'm a little bit OCD about it, so I'm gonna do it 1, 2, 3, 4. So I got my score, got my slip, aka water, press it in there, blending. Now your kinders absolutely are not gonna know how to blend. That's okay. That is all right. I like to just warn my students, hey guys, just so you know, if you do not score, slip, and blend well enough, don't be surprised if your pottery comes back with little pieces broken. So particularly in pottery, we don't want to have anything that is long and thin. So I would never make a petal that, say, comes out to here. That's absolutely going to break. And you can see how I'm actually bending down the petals. That's because as little as sticks out from your pot as possible, the better. The less likely it is to be snapped off. You know, we have to transport our pieces twice, and that means that there's a lot of room for pottery to get broken along the way. So slip is in there. Now we've blended it. Now we have 3 more. I'm going to go ahead and score all 3 of those so we can make this a little bit faster. All 4 of those. Score, 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 score. Hashtag, hashtag, score, score, hashtag, hashtag. I'm going to get my slip in there. Just make a little assembly line here. All right, and now these guys are going to go in really nicely and just fill in that hole. And I can't even see that there used to be a hole there. It's going to be a little bit tough when you get to this point to blend, and again, that's okay. It's not the end of the world if it's not blended. Just warn your students, it's possible your work's going to come back a little bit broken if you haven't blended everything well. And most of the students by the end of the semester will be little pros in this as well. So we have been doing this project for springtime. Gosh, I think for like 6 or 7 years we've been doing this, and we have literally tried every single way to make this bowl, and we have found this is the easiest way for us to make this bowl. All right, so our last step here, our second to last step, is we're going to make the inside, this little whatever that's called, in there. So we're going to roll up our ball, we're going to flatten it, smash it down. That's a little large, but that's okay. I can cut it a little bit smaller. Whenever your students are cutting clay, they're going to get kind of like little burrs on there. If that drives them nuts, they can use their water to make it smoother. You know, and depending on your class, if you have a small class and it's only, 12 kids, you're going to have a lot more time to get fancy with your clay and do all these little extra details and whatnot. If you have a large class, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. All right, so this guy has decided to make itself concave. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I do want to make sure that I put a little bit of texture on this pot. I'll put these side by side. When we glaze these, the glaze is going to kind of settle down into all of these little textured valleys like this. And that looks really nice. It's going to look a lot better than just this. So encourage your students to add a little bit of texture. They can do dots are good for the inside because, that's like what it would be in an actual flower. This would have a bunch of little teeny tiny delicate prongs, or I don't know what they're called, you guys. I also like to do my petals. I like to do a nice little line on my petals. You can do 3 lines, you can do 1 line, whatever their little hearts desire. They can add dots on that if they want to, whatever it is that they want to do. Last thing that I will say on this is if you have a student that's an early finisher and it's like they're already done, they threw this together, and you still have 30 minutes left in class, as always, I always tell my students, what else can we do to our pot to add more texture or design or whatever word you want to say? Basically, you want to eat up more time, because having 15 kids that are done early and they're going to run around the classroom and it's going to be chaos. So I always suggest that my students do a little bit extra. So the extra in this would be, let's draw some designs on the outside. You have a blank canvas right here. You can basically do, whatever you want with this pencil to draw a design on there. All of my teachers will also have some modeling clay. So when you have people who are finished early on projects, instead of them running around, if they don't want to free draw, you'll have modeling clay that you use, you keep and reuse. So don't let the students take that home. But the modeling clay will be for after class if kids are kind of bouncing around and you don't want to, keep saying sit down, sit down. This is what the modeling clay looks like. You'll get one bag of this for the whole semester, so don't let the students take it home. I advise them not to mix it up because then you just have like a bunch of gray clay. All right, that's pretty much it. When the students are done, make sure you write the name on the bottom. You need to write the full first name and the last initial. And I always have teachers that are like, can I just write their initials? No, because you inevitably will have one class that has two of the same initials. And this has happened before. This is why we do this. And the kids will argue, well, that one's mine, that one's mine. There's really no way to tell because all you wrote was the initials. We have even had in a class, two girls with the same first name. So when we wrote their names, Anika, and then they both had the same last initial, they had a huge argument over whose it was. The parents got involved. It was a whole mess. So in most cases, the full name is good along with the last initial. So for example, my name is Alyssa Brooks. So we'll write Alyssa B. Please do not let the students write their own names because it never fails. I cannot read it. It gets smashed. It's just a mess. So I need all of my teachers, you have the adult handwriting, please write the full name on there with your own handwriting. That's pretty much it, you guys. I hope you guys liked that one.